Ever woken up in the middle of the night, chest tight, staring at the ceiling, trying to make numbers that just don't add up? Ever felt that quiet shame when your kids ask about future plans and you got nothing to say? You know that feeling of running a marathon for decades only to look back and realize you've barely moved an inch. I've seen it thousands of times. People in their 50s, 55s, 60s, who worked their whole lives, woken up early, sweated, done everything they were told, and when they finally stop to look at the results, their bank account is empty, retirement is a joke, and they feel like life played a dirty trick on them. The pain isn't just financial, it's existential. It's looking in the mirror and asking yourself where you went wrong, why everyone else seems to have figured it out and you haven't, why you, who's always been a hard worker, honest, dedicated, is in this situation. And the worst part is the silent judgment. People don't say it, but you feel it in their looks, in the way conversations change when you walk in how your own family treats you with that mix of pity and contempt. You feel invisible, disposable, like you've lost the right to have a voice because you don't have money. I understand this pain perfectly. For over 7 decades, observing markets and people, I've seen patterns repeat with almost mathematical precision. And today, I need to tell you a truth that nobody has had the courage to tell you. If you're over 50 and still broke, the problem isn't what you think. In fact, you've been a victim of one of the greatest silent frauds in modern history. And I'm going to show you exactly how it happened and what you can still do about it. Today, I want to talk about the subject nobody dares to touch. Everyone wants to teach you how to get rich. I want to show you why you're broke. And no, it's not because you're lazy, dumb, or untalented. It's much more sinister than that. You've been programmed to fail. Look, most people think money is about math. What you earn minus what you spend equals what you save. They're completely wrong. Money is about physics. It's about invisible forces that operate in your life without you realizing it. And if you're over 50 and broke, it's because you've spent your whole life fighting forces you didn't even know existed. Let me explain what I call the physics of age and money. There's a concept in physics called entropy. It's the natural tendency of all things towards chaos, disorder, dissipation of energy. In the financial universe, entropy increases exponentially with age. The older you get, the faster your wealth dissipates if you don't understand the laws governing this process. And here's the brutal truth nobody told you. After 50, you're no longer playing the same game. The rules have changed, but nobody warned you. When you were 20, 30, time was your ally. You could make mistakes, start over, learn the hard way. Compound interest worked in your favor because you had decades ahead of you. But now, after 50, time has become your enemy. Every year that passes without wealth is a year you'll never get back. And the math is cruel. If you're 55 and starting from scratch, you need to save and invest approximately 5 times more per month than a 25-year-old to reach the same place by 65. 5 times more. But here's the problem. At 55, you generally don't earn 5 times more. In fact, you often earn less than you did at 40 because the market has deemed you obsolete. So you're in an impossible equation. You need more money exactly when you have less capacity to earn. You need more time exactly when time is running out. And while you try to solve this equation, life continues to charge you the same bills, the same taxes, the same expenses. It's like trying to climb an escalator that's going down and its speed increases every year. Now let me tell you what really happened to you. You didn't fail. You were tricked. I'll explain how. When you were young, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they sold you a script. This script said, study, get a job, work hard, be loyal to the company, and in the end, you'll have a comfortable retirement, your own home, and security. This script worked for the previous generation. It worked for those who retired in the 70s and 80s. But you know why? Because they lived through a historical anomaly. They lived in the post-war period when there was a shortage of skilled labor, strong unions, generous private pensions, controlled inflation, and a constantly expanding economy. You, on the other hand, entered the job market exactly when this anomaly was ending. You caught the transition. You saw companies break pension contracts. You saw outsourcing, precarious work, automation, globalization. You played the game by the old rules, but the board had completely changed, and nobody warned you. Your parents gave you advice based on their experience. Your teachers taught you truths that were already outdated, and you confidently followed the path everyone said was right. And here's the most painful part. While you followed the old script, a new class was being created. People who understood that the rules had changed. People who stopped trading time for money and started making money work for them. People who understood that in the new economy, assets are everything and salary is an illusion. And the gap between you and them grew exponentially with each decade. In the 90s, the difference was still manageable. In the 2000s, it was already significant. Today, in 2026, the difference is abysmal. You're competing in a world where productivity has multiplied tenfold, but wages have barely kept up with inflation. You're living in an economy where the return on capital far exceeds the return on labor. And this isn't an opinion, it's math. French economist Thomas Piketty documented this with surgical precision. When the return on capital is greater than economic growth, inequality inevitably increases. And you're on the wrong side of this equation. But look, I'm not telling you this to depress you. I'm telling you because you need to understand the battlefield before you fight. You need to know what you're fighting against. And now comes the first trap, the first loop that keeps you stuck even after understanding the problem. I call it the trap of perpetual urgency. Here's the adaptation. It works like this. You're broke at 50 because every month is a crisis. The electric bill, rent, groceries, prescriptions, car repairs, health issues. You're constantly putting out fires. And when you're constantly putting out fires, you can't plan. You can't invest. You can't think long term because the short term is suffocating you. It's like drowning. When you're drowning, you can't think about learning to swim better. You can only think about breathing. And this constant urgency creates a vicious cycle. You need money now, so you take any job, any terms, any salary. That job consumes all your time and energy. By the end of the month, you've spent it all just surviving. And the next month, the same urgency, the same crisis, the same cycle, and you age within this cycle, never escaping it. There's a fascinating study by Harvard researcher Sendil Mullainathan on scarcity. He found that when you live in constant scarcity, your cognitive capacity decreases by an average of 13 IQ points. 13 points. That's the difference between an average person and someone with learning disabilities. You literally get dumber when you're broke, not because you're unintelligent, but because your brain is using all available capacity to manage scarcity. It's like trying to run a complex program on a computer that's already maxed out on memory. The system slows down, crashes, can't process. And then you make bad decisions. You take out loans with absurd interest rates because you need to solve today's problem. You buy on installment because you don't have the cash up front. You take jobs that destroy you physically because you can't afford to be without income. And every bad decision pushes you deeper into the hole. Every choice made under pressure takes you further from the solution. You're trapped in a loop where poverty itself prevents you from escaping poverty. And here, I want to make an important pause. If what I'm describing here is exactly what you're going through, if you recognize your own life in this description, I need you to do something right now. It's not just for you. It's for everyone watching who feels the same way, but thinks they're alone. Type in the comments, "This is my reality now." Just that. 4 words. But when you do that, when you publicly acknowledge where you are, 3 things happen. First, you take the power away from shame. Shame only works in silence. Second, you help other people feel less alone, less invisible. And third, you take the first step toward change. Because change begins with brutal honesty about where you are. So go ahead, comment now. This is my reality now. I read every comment, and I promise you, you are not alone in this. Now, let's move on to the second trap. The trap of the invisible cost of aging. Here's something nobody told you when you were young. Getting older is expensive. And I'm not just talking about prescriptions and doctors. I'm talking about an entire system built to drain money from older people. You pay more for health insurance. You pay more for life insurance. You spend more on body maintenance, physical therapy, dental work, glasses, checkups. Your kids are still financially dependent because the economy is so tough they can't get on their feet. Your parents are getting older and need help. You're being squeezed from both sides, supporting the generation above and the generation below, while barely able to support yourself. And all the while, your ability to generate income is declining. You don't have the physical energy you had in your 30s anymore. You can't work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Your body charges its toll. Your back hurts. Your knees ache. You get sick more often and take longer to recover. And the job market knows this. The job market sees you as a depreciated asset. You're more expensive because you have more experience, but they don't want to pay for experience. They'd rather hire a 25-year-old for a third of your salary and train them. You've become disposable. And here's the hardest truth of all. You're in a race against time that you can't win the traditional way. If you keep trying to solve your financial problems the same way you've tried for the last 30 years, you'll reach 70, 80 years old in the same situation or worse. Because what worked at 30 doesn't work at 50. The strategy of trading your time and energy for money has diminishing returns as you age. You need a fundamental strategy shift. You need to stop thinking about jobs and start thinking about assets. But here's the problem. To build assets, you need startup capital. And you don't have capital, you barely have money to get through the month. So how do you get out of this trap? How do you build assets when you have no money to invest? Here's what I've learned watching people who've turned things around after 50. It's not impossible, but it requires a radical shift in mindset. It requires you to stop playing the game you were taught and start playing a different game. The third trap is the trap of linear thinking. You were trained to think linearly. If you work harder, you'll earn more. If you save more, you'll accumulate more. If you're more loyal to the company, you'll get promoted. But the world doesn't work linearly anymore. The world works exponentially. And the difference between linear and exponential thinking is the difference between dying poor and dying at peace. Let me give you a concrete example. You know someone who works as hard as you, maybe even less, but somehow they're doing well financially. How? Because at some point in their life, They made an exponential choice instead of a linear one. Maybe they bought a small property 20 years ago, and today that property is worth 5 times more. Maybe they started a side hustle that grew. Maybe they invested in a rare skill that's highly valued now. Maybe they simply understood that money multiplies through assets, not through a paycheck. And while you kept trading hours for dollars, they created systems that generate money without their constant presence. That's the difference. They understood leverage. They understood that 1 hour of their work needs to generate more than 1 hour of value. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking it's too late for you, that you don't have time to build assets anymore, that you missed the boat. But here's the truth. You're right if you keep thinking that way. If you think it's too late, it really is too late. Not because it's objectively late, but because your belief creates your reality. There's a psychological phenomenon called the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you failed, you stop trying. If you stop trying, you confirm you failed, and the cycle continues. On the other hand, if you believe it's still possible, you keep looking for opportunities. And when you look, you eventually find them. I've seen people start from scratch at 55 and build significant wealth by 65. They didn't get rich, but they went from a state of desperation to a state of dignity. And you know what the difference was? They stopped playing the old game and started playing a new one. They understood that at 50, you don't compete with young folks in the traditional job market. You compete in a different market where experience, knowledge, and your network are your assets. So here's what you need to do. First, stop comparing yourself to those who started early. That comparison just paralyzes you. You're not competing with someone who has 30 years of accumulated investments. You're competing with your own version of yesterday. The question isn't how you stack up against others. The question is, are you better today than you were yesterday? Second, accept that you're not going to accumulate wealth the traditional way. You don't have 20 years left for compound interest to work its magic. But you have something young people don't: experience, knowledge, a network, skills honed over decades. The question is how to monetize that non-linearly. Maybe it's consulting. Maybe it's mentoring. Maybe it's a small business providing a service you've mastered. Maybe it's teaching online what you know how to do. Maybe it's partnering with younger people who have the energy but lack the experience. You need to think about leverage, how to make 1 hour of your time generate more than 1 hour of value. Third, ruthlessly cut anything that isn't essential. And I'm not talking about living miserably, I'm talking about eliminating waste. Do you have subscriptions you don't use? Cancel them. Do you have a car when you could use public transport? Sell it. Are you living in an expensive place because you've always lived there? Move. I know this hurts. I know it feels like defeat. But it's not defeat, it's strategy. You're in a war, and in war, you don't cling to luxuries. You focus on survival and victory. Every dollar you save is a dollar you can redirect to building something. And here's the secret. You don't need a lot of money to start. What you need is consistency. $50 a month invested smartly for 10 years turns into something, not a fortune, but dignity, options, not being completely dependent on a pathetic government pension. Fourth, protect your health as if your life depends on it, because it literally does. Any serious health problem at 50, 60 years old is a financial bomb. A hospital stay, surgery, a prolonged treatment can wipe out any small nest egg you've managed to build. So invest in prevention, exercise, eat well within your means, get enough sleep, get preventive checkups. Your health is your most important asset now. Because without health, you can't work. And if you can't work, you have no income. And if you have no income, you're done. Fifth action, rebuild your network with purpose. You've lived 5, 6 decades. You know hundreds of people. Some of those people can help you. I'm not talking about borrowing money. I'm talking about opportunities. Someone needs a service you can provide. Someone knows someone looking for exactly your profile. Someone can teach you a skill you can monetize, but you need to reconnect. You need to be humble enough to ask for help without shame. Pride kills. Humility opens doors. The fourth trap is the failure narrative trap. You've built a story about yourself, and that story says you're a failure, that you didn't manage money well, that you made bad decisions, that you're inferior to people who succeeded, and that narrative defines you. It limits you. It paralyzes you. But here's the truth. That narrative is a lie. You didn't fail. You got caught in a historical transition that no one prepared you for. You played the game honestly, following the rules you were taught. The problem wasn't you. It was that the rules changed mid-game, and nobody told you. Now, does that mean you're a victim and have no responsibility? No. It means you need to stop carrying a guilt that isn't entirely yours. It means you need to rewrite your narrative. Instead of, I am a failure, the narrative needs to be, I was misled. But now I understand the real game, and I'm going to play it differently. This narrative shift changes everything. It changes how you see yourself. It changes how others see you. It changes what opportunities you spot. It changes what risks you're willing to take. And let's talk about risk. Because here's another counterintuitive truth. At 50 broke, you should be more daring, not more conservative. Conventional wisdom says the older you get, the more conservative you should be with money. But that wisdom was made for people who have money. If you have nothing, you have nothing to lose. You should be willing to try things that people with wealth wouldn't. You should be willing to take calculated risks. Start a business, change careers, invest in a course that teaches you a valuable skill, even if it means tightening your belt even more for a few months. Because the risk of doing nothing is greater than the risk of doing something wrong. If you do nothing, you're guaranteed where you'll end up, in the same situation or worse by 70. If you try something different, you have a chance to change trajectory. Can it go wrong? Yes. So what? You're already at the bottom. When you're at the bottom, any upward movement is progress. Now comes the fifth trap, and this one is perhaps the cruelest, the false hope trap. The financial education and personal development market is full of people selling impossible dreams, promising you'll get rich in 6 months, that there's a secret formula, that all you have to do is take this course, buy this method, follow these steps, and you, desperate, believe them. You spend the little money you have on courses that lead you nowhere. You waste time and energy chasing mirages. And in the end, you're even more broke and even more hopeless. So let me be brutally honest with you. You are not going to get rich. Not at 50, 60, starting from scratch. You won't. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying to take your money. But here's what you can do. You can get out of desperation. You can build a minimally decent financial situation. You can reach 70 without relying on your children's charity or the misery of a minimum retirement. You can have some peace. And that, while not the dream they sold you, is a monumental achievement. It's the difference between dying with dignity and dying in poverty. And for that, you need one thing above all: brutal realism. You need to look at your situation exactly as it is. How much you earn, how much you spend, how much you owe, how much time you statistically have left. And from there, build a possible plan, not a plan to get rich, a plan to survive with dignity. And that plan has some non-negotiable pillars. First pillar, eliminate debt. If you owe, you're paying interest, and interest keeps you poor. You need to get out of debt no matter what it takes. Sell whatever you have to sell, negotiate, declare you can't afford to pay, and propose a settlement, but get out of debt. Because while you're in debt, you're running on a treadmill, working for the bank, not for yourself. Second pillar, create a minimal emergency fund. Even if it's $1,000, even if it takes a year to save, you need a cushion. Because without a cushion, any unforeseen event will push you back into the hole. Third pillar, develop a source of income that doesn't depend exclusively on your time and physical energy. This is crucial. You're getting older. Your body will fail. If your income depends entirely on you being physically present and working, you will collapse. You need something that generates money even when you're sick, even when you're tired. It could be a small business run with help from others. It could be digital content that generates passive income. It could be renting out a room in your house. It could be stock dividends, even small ones. Anything that doesn't completely stop when you do. Fourth pillar, maximize your official retirement. I know Social Security can feel like a joke sometimes, but it's better than nothing. Check if you're contributing correctly. See if you're losing contribution time due to any errors. Consider contributing as an independent contractor if you're not formally employed. Because when you reach 65, 70 years old, even that meager amount will make a difference. Fifth pillar, build genuine relationships, not fake networking, real relationships. Because when you're old and poor, what saves you isn't money. It's people, family who takes you in, friends who help you, community that supports you. Invest in being a person who adds value to others' lives. Help when you can. Be present. Be reliable. Because these relationships are your true wealth. And often, they're worth more than money in the bank. And finally, accept that your journey is different. You're not competing with a colleague who retired at 50 with $2 million invested. You're competing with yourself. You're trying to be better tomorrow than you are today. And that's all you need. Because the truth is, happiness doesn't come from having a lot. It comes from having enough. And enough is subjective. It's having a place to live without fear of eviction. It's having food to eat without going hungry. It's having a minimum of health and comfort. It's having a few people who care about you. It's having dignity. And dignity you can still achieve. It's not too late. It's only too late if you give up. If you keep trying, keep adjusting, keep learning, keep fighting, you'll get there. You might not get where you dreamed of, but you'll get to a place infinitely better than where you are now. So let's recap what we've discussed. You're broke at 50, not because you're incompetent. You're broke because you were a victim of a brutal historical transition where the rules of the game changed without warning. You fell into the trap of perpetual urgency, where you're always putting out fires and never get to plan. You face the invisible cost of age, getting squeezed between generations and by the market. You think linearly in an exponential world. You carry a narrative of failure that paralyzes you, and you're bombarded by false hopes that drain your money and energy. But there's a way out. The way out involves brutal realism, eliminating debt, building a minimal emergency fund, creating income that doesn't depend solely on your body, maximizing your official retirement, and building genuine relationships. It's not a path to riches. It's a path to dignity. And dignity, my friend, is already a monumental victory. Now comes the final part, the part where I remind you that you still have power. You still have choices. You can choose to keep doing what you've always done and end up where you've always ended up. Or you can choose to do things differently. You can choose to look at your situation head on without lies. You can choose to cut what needs to be cut. You can choose to try what you've never tried. You can choose to be humble enough to ask for help. You can choose to be brave enough to start over. And that choice, that decision not to give up, not to surrender to the narrative of failure, to keep fighting even when everything seems lost, that choice defines you more than any number in your bank account. Because in the end, what matters isn't how much you have, it's who you are. And who you are isn't determined by your net worth. It's determined by your choices. And you can still choose to be someone who didn't give up. Someone who looked the abyss in the face and said no. Someone who fought until their last breath for a life with dignity. That no one can take from you. That is your power. Use it. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, it means something important. It means you're not looking for shortcuts. You're not looking for magic formulas. You're looking for truth. And truth hurts, but truth liberates. And that's exactly what I offer on this channel. Every week, I bring you deep reflections on money, wealth, mindset, and life. Reflections that go against everything you've been taught. Reflections that show you how the game really works. Not to make you rich overnight, that's a lie, but to give you clarity, to give you tools, to give you dignity. If you want to be part of this journey, if you want to understand the invisible forces that govern your financial life, subscribe to the channel now and hit the notification bell. You'll become part of a community of people who think differently. People who don't accept the lies society sells. People who are willing to face the truth, even when it hurts. People who understand that real knowledge, not empty promises, is what changes lives. I'll be here every week bringing you this content. See you in the next video.